Okay, I started. Good morning. As usual, he's not here yet, but he's coming in the minute. I just want to make sure sound is okay. So let's see, heard of my monitors. I heard it. Hello everybody, this is Ayako. I am in the back of the video. I just wondering, hi Sarah, good morning. Make sure you can hear me. Seems okay. Just a minute, please. He'll be here in a minute. Here he is.
Okay.
I already started.
Already started?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm not needed, actually.
Empty.
That would be very... Actually... nice and interesting. You can have it. Hello, everyone. I go here. I put this away. I don't think we need this out. Okay. So I'm here. And the biggest question I have...
Copeland's there.
No, but I don't think I'm going to do Copeland today.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I did it so much. But I may do at the very end something about Copeland. Just to connect things together. But this is important. Here. And... sorry. I will be with everyone in just a second. Actually, more than a second, because I think I put... Very, a little bit confused. Wait. This is this.
Hi Vanessa. Good morning.
Okay. And I think I have one thing over there. I think I have everything I need now.
Excellent.
I think so. Let me check. Oh no. Still one more thing. Must be here though. I'm very confused.
Move the camera too much, then
Oh, don't worry about the camera.
people feel nausea, so
I know.
stay.
That's terrible. Here. Very odd. That's what I took this morning out.
Hi Justin, how are you? Nice. Good morning, Jen.
Yeah, of course I put it back rather than forward.
Good boy.
That's one thing. Spore, I mentioned I would do probably, so I thought I should do it. Okay. Still one more thing. I know. this gets more and more erratic every week.
Never learn.
Yeah. Okay. So now. Uh-oh. If one of you in the audience has any idea how you can help me get rid of these annoying sounds. I thought that I got rid of all of them in the preferences and here, so nothing would beep or ring at all, but it happens anyway. Okay. You see, as I mentioned last time, I decided to go paperless. Instead, you use this, and I will. Okay, so everyone, good morning, good evening, good day. Welcome once again to our Friday little live stream. And again, it seems like I'm doing lots of, and because of that, everything has this sameness, which I keep commenting about, but it's really very, very true. It's thing. And yet, things are in a certain way the same, and not in a very good way, of course. You know, we still have the pandemic, and this second wave, so to speak, seems to be actually happening in many places. And there are even spikes in New York City, and that's something I will speak about in a minute. There's still great social unrest. It's inside the United States, inside other countries, and also between countries, between especially what's been in the news recently, that's between Armenia and Azerbaijan, that's over Nagorno-Karabakh, and which has historically been a disputed territory. And as I spoke about noble lies and ignoble lies, and what I'm going to speak about today probably are simply lies as well. Territory is also in the category of the noble and to ignoble lie, of course. And territory often hides things like competition for natural resources and certain. I hear something which is odd. Yeah. Sorry about that. This is some other things, but I don't know if anyone can hear this, but I think one of our neighbors is trying to practice. Okay, the piano. And these lies about territory, for instance, can actually be incredibly pernicious and long-lasting. These are, I can call them zombie lies in a certain way, because no matter how we seem to try to erase such kinds of feelings, sort of possessiveness, etc., they always seem to come back. But I want to talk about, here, I have everything here, but it's a big mess. So can people hear me, by the way? It's yes? Okay. I'm trying to speak a little bit louder, but I probably often sort of fade away. First of all, there has been news, and that has to do with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the administration, and people involved in the White House and in the executive branch who have dealings with the president, who have become infected with COVID-19. So, of course, Donald Trump was airlifted to the hospital and received very experimental in a certain way treatment, and this is something I will come to in a bit once again. And many members of the administration, of course, have become positive for COVID-19. They've actually contracted the disease. And I've read a kind of cute and interesting, it's not cute, I should say, statistic. At the moment, at least what I've been able to count, the White House has 34 active cases. Now, there are many countries in the world, not counties, not towns, not cities, but countries, which have far fewer. And I'll just go through a few of them. This is that I just wrote down here. New Zealand, 16 active cases. Vietnam, 4 active cases. Papua New Guinea, 7. Sudan, 28. Yemen, 18. Liberia, 11. Cambodia, 4. Malawi, 30. Botswana, 0. Barbados, 13. Tanzania, 0. Bhutan, 22. It's kind of remarkable statistic. So the White House itself has more active cases than more than this number of countries. And there are countries which have considerably fewer cases. And I don't understand exactly why more is not made of these statistics. Not simply that the United States, for instance, is maybe doing worse than most first world rich countries. I know I'm supposed to keep going, but okay. Here we go. I start this and always will get better. Hopefully by time I actually have to start talking about music, we will, or I will at least have woken up enough. Okay. These countries are not the rich and powerful of the world. They are countries which, like Vietnam, at one time were totally devastated, like Botswana, are quite poor, and yet they have been able to control the virus in ways which, of course, we have not been able to at all. I have the feeling that, again, this is it's not the noble lie, and it's not the ignoble lie. It's just the lie that wealth creates security has made people actually forget what kind of responsibility we need in order to ensure security. And countries, I mean, such as Vietnam, which underwent such devastation, and also remember more recent epidemics such as SARS, are able to deal with this kind of pandemic, as we say, in ways which a country like the United States is not able to. This also leads to issues such as conspiracy theories regarding vaccines, how vaccines are really a way to control people, or that they cause different diseases, etc. In fact, and none of this is true. But the issue is simply that people have become comfortable because of the success of programs such as vaccination, and because of that, they have forgotten that the advent of the vaccine, the development, the concept of vaccine has been very important for the health of the world. Okay, I continue. Let me see, because I have here, and I'm totally sort of spaced out today, so I can't say. Okay, now let me see if there's something else. Yeah, I think this is time now. I go to what I really wanted to talk about before the music. I know, I'm getting all these looks. It's like, what are you doing? You have no business talking about things you have no idea about. Okay, but there is a beauty to what is called logic, and just sort of looking at things in a logically dispassionate way. And I'm talking about New York again. There have been places where there have been spikes now in New York City of COVID-19. And the problem that we have, and here I will read a bit about this, yes. You see that it's on Thursday. This just happened. It's today. New York officials, includes, of course, the Governor Cuomo of New York State and de Blasio, the mayor of New York, issued lockdown orders for certain small areas in the city which had experienced significant spikes kind of all of a sudden. And this is something that's going to happen periodically with this virus, and something that other countries have also dealt with in sometimes a little brutal way, sometimes or more often in an intelligent way. Anyway, okay, now this is the problem, is that the governor and the mayor issued conflicting orders for the lockdown, conflicting places also. So one said, let's say, one neighborhood should be locked down, and the other one said, no, that neighborhood should not be locked down. Another neighborhood should be locked down. So there's infighting about actually how to lock down and where to lock down and who to lock down, etc., etc. It's a kind of turf war that's going on, which is totally absurd. And this brings me to my main rant topic, let's say. And they've been reading two very important books. You know. And the first is by Amy Chua, and I will just show that to you here. It's called Political Tribes. Okay? Amy, this is a very interesting sociologist, and the basic point of the book is that, well, first of all, that the tribal instinct, I should say, of people, just like with many other species of animals, not only primates, for instance, but wolves, elephants, etc., that they gather bison, that's gather together in groups, and these groups are not necessarily even political, let's say, not ideological, but they are really tribal. And so much of the mistakes that, well, first of all, the United States has made in foreign policy, and other countries have made in foreign policy, is due to a lack of appreciation of this tribal nature. Now, of course, we had a debacle in Iraq, in Afghanistan, still happening now, and she points out that there was a lack of appreciation of the different tribal rivalries you have, and of course that was something that was very, very obvious at the time. This is now already a long time ago, when George Bush launched this ill-fated crusade, I should say, to try to democratize the Middle East. And as he said, that when they understand what freedom is, then they will all join with us. Now, of course, that's nonsense, and this will come to my next point, but not quite yet. So, we see this kind of tribal competition, let's say, and rivalry, etc., and disastrous war, etc. Even in small things, you have gangs, but you also have political parties. You have, as we see in New York City now, this turf war, and we can look at that as, in a certain way, as a kind of tribal conflict. Now, there's even a more important book, which, if I can actually manage this here, no, I did the wrong thing. Resume this here. Okay, which I've been reading, and this is a very important book by actually quite important person. Her name is Sarah Chase, and I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong also. That's since I basically know these people and many people simply by text. And it's called On Corruption in America. Okay. And she's the person also who developed a plan for Iraq, a plan for Afghanistan, which was totally ignored by the American administration of the time, and that comes through a couple administrations, actually. And the point of this book is, and maybe I can read a tiny book here. You see, it's one second. I have to. No, it's just too much trouble. I don't bother. If people want to look, read, get this book, read this book, it's very, very important, I think. So her point, though, I will just summarize, is that conflicts and what should I say, allegiances of people and people's views maybe do not have as much to do with kind of tribal rivalries as they have to do with reactions to corruption. And she documented how many people actually joined the Taliban. They joined various sects in very violently also in Iraq as a reaction to what they felt was endemic corruption. Now, and the United States came in, did things, and in fact, a lot of the opposition was the fact that we did not go in and present the virtues of freedom, but we actually supported corruption. And the systemic corruption is something which is really destroying the world. And a lot has been talked about systemic racism, and that's something which is very, of course, important, but underlying that is systemic corruption. And things like tribal allegiances, etc., fears, stereotypes, etc., are manipulated for the gain of certain people. Okay, this is that, and let me see, where am I? I think I did, yeah, okay, great. Because everything is just a mess with me right now. And having said that, I come back to COVID-19, coronavirus. I'm getting terrible looks now, but I have to do this. Because our president, and I'm sorry I become more and more bitter in a certain way now, because we understand how to control the virus and how perhaps we can even, we won't eliminate it exactly, but we can mitigate its destructive effects. We understand that in the world very well, but it's not happening. Okay, so our president came down with COVID-19, was rushed to the hospital, had this sort of breakthrough treatment, and then he came out and he immediately talked about his cure. And that was this cocktail of antibodies produced by a company, Regeneron. This is the formula is called REGN-CoV2, of course. That's it. But he called it the Regeneron cure. Now, why am I talking about this? Because the CEO of Regeneron is an old friend of Trump. He's an old one. This has been documented in the New York Times. So the speech about this, even though it may be completely sincere, anyway, comes basically down to kind of I'm being told, no, don't say. Okay, but I just have to say, basic corruption. That's very, very, very disturbing in a way. Although, if it does turn out that this cocktail of antibodies is in any way effective, that's absolutely wonderful for the world. Okay. Enough of that. And now I come to what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about, and continue it from last week. And this has to do with the issue of consciousness and technique on instruments. And although I was going to actually bring in this sense of this idea of different kinds of, which I would call not lies, not noble lies, because noble lies I think are more global, political, and ignoble lies as well. These are basically half-truths, which I've talked about before. So I may deal with that as I'm working here. But what I want to do is just go through a few pieces now and show you how I look at them in the way that enables me to actually play them. And these are kind of famous, difficult so-called places. Okay, now for that, of course, I do actually need a clarinet. Which one should I use? Maybe shall I try this? Okay. I think I'll use the same terrible reed that I used last week. Maybe I will change it. A little chilly here, so I'm worried about the instruments. Okay, I will have to here. Wow, I don't think I can use it. Wait. I think I'll try. Okay, so. Okay, it seems to work, although it's not really something I would normally play on. That's the great advantage of doing things here. I don't worry about whether my reed is good or bad. I'm even playing the wrong ligature, but that's okay too. So, with that in mind, I have one more coffee here. And I start with these pieces. And I will start with actually Spore. And no, I don't actually need it, but I kind of like this. So I'll just show you my music. This is my copy. I have others, but somehow I love the broken copies that I have because they have history, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think that's anyway. Okay. Let me put other stuff here so this whole thing doesn't fall down. I'll do this here, and then I probably won't use it, but it's here anyway. Okay. So. And there are a couple passages in this piece which have a reputation of being rather difficult. I say the first, of course, is in the very beginning of the first movement, and Spohr wrote it for the clarinetist. This is Hermsted, who was the biggest virtuoso technically at the time. There was the two of them were Berman and Hermsted, and as was noted by many critics and people, they said that Berman was maybe the more subtle musician, and Hermsted was the more brilliant that way. And because of his brilliance, Spohr wrote a concerto which is interesting. What's that? Oh yes, shall we do this? Oh,
yeah.
Oh, this is kind of interesting. I forgot about this, but it's a little bit heavy. But yeah, I was made the honorary president of the Simon Hermsted Society.
This was present from family?
Yes. And this was a present from his family. Yes, right. There's Hermsted. Okay, that's and Hermsted was head of music in the little town of Sondershausen, which was very important, together with cities like Weimar and Leipzig, which was a larger town. It's very, very important for culture and especially for music in the 19th century and even earlier. That's the beginning of 19th, the end of the 18th century. When I was invited there to take part in the what was the 150th anniversary of the death of Hermsted. At that time, it was there had just been unification between the two Germanys, and it was, of course, like most of the culturally important parts of Germany was in the east. And so I flew into Leipzig, and then to get to Sondershausen took a few hours because there were no roads this way. So it was sort of as if I was going back into the 19th century in order to go to this little town, which was a tiny town, which probably had more, but I actually thought it just had one hotel, kind of this little, and well, I played actually not the first, but the second concerto of Spohr, and we had a little celebration, and a moment of silence next to the grave of Ermstead, and I was made the unofficial, I think, although so president of the Hermstead Society. That's at that time, and given this portrait of Hermstead. So, of course, I have no other particularly, I would say, close connection with Spohr concertos because, of course, they were written very far in the past. But I can, because of my status as president, I can actually pontificate about them a bit. But here, this passage here was written, and Spohr wrote this piece with kind of a dedicated obliviousness to what was possible in the clarinet at that time, because he was so impressed with Hermsted's playing. And this actually led to something very interesting, and we can see here the connections which are very important between composers and performers. And in this case, when Hermstead actually received the concerto from Spohr, he realized that he couldn't play it because he played at that time a clarinet which had 6 keys, and you just could not play this piece with just 6 keys. So he had to go to a maker, and the maker's name I actually don't know. I always mean to find out about that, and I'm sure that some of you in the audience probably do know this maker and maybe know a lot more about what I'm talking about than I do. But if you do, let me know. That's very nice. I'm always interested. But they developed a clarinet with 12 keys. This was also at the same time that Ivan Müller in Paris was developing a clarinet with 12 keys as well, which could play in all keys. That Berman actually played an instrument with 10 keys, I think, if I remember correctly. And I have played these pieces, the first and second concertos, which were written close together and were written basically for the same instrument with 12 keys, on an instrument I have which has 11 keys. And I thought, yes, I actually do need that 12th key. It's a little bit, would have helped me out. With that said, even on modern instruments like this, there are passages in this piece which are a little bit awkward. Now, for that, I go back to very early Livestream where I talked about the harmonic series, as I call them, and we often call them in English, different partials of the clarinet, which actually delineate the different registers of the instrument and how you actually have to play them with different embouchures, regardless of what I call not even the noble lie, not even the noble half-truth, but simply the half-truth or the lie that you never change your embouchure when you play. That's and I will speak about that even more. But the fact is that you do change the embouchure And I think the reason why we are told that we don't is because what we change is very much hidden from us, since it's inside the mouth. And even the manipulation on the reed is in fact subtle to other people, to people looking at you, even though for us it may be, if we're not used to it, actually a lot. It should be quite marked, I should say. So I just recapitulate this for people perhaps who were not watching earlier, or people who don't know. And if you do know, and this is very boring for you, you can actually tune out for a little while. Okay, but this is, so we do have these partials on the clarinet, different harmonics. That's a, and because of the nature of the clarinet, of course, we don't have all of them as we go up the registers, but we basically have what we call odd partials, and that's why the clarinet does not overblow, as people say, overblow, and I thought that's kind of an interesting kind of term. We can overblow, we can underblow, I guess, and we can just blow, but yeah. I know. I sort of dabble in this and that and the other thing, and my mind just wanders. Okay, so in fact, you have to manipulate the reed in order to get these different partials, and you have different places on the reed which actually produce them. And I will make a detour in this now. And this has to do with ideology. We can say philosophy and tribalism. Because I've gotten into a lot of trouble about this and throughout them, earlier especially. That's about certain things that I've said about the and but what should I say? But for me, what is important is not the ideology behind what I'm doing, but I just tell you what I've discovered for myself. And what allows me to play all the way up to there and down, even higher, with no problem. And when I started teaching, and this is actually something I was just thinking about this morning. Teaching can be kind of drudgery, etc., but it's actually very beneficial even to the teacher, I think, and to me. And I think it made my playing better, of course. And I was even thinking about Mozart. This is just stream of consciousness today, totally. And because it was always said, and he also said that, because he didn't have a patron, a steady job, as we would say today, he was forced to teach. And that, of course, took away from perhaps his productivity in composition, although I don't know how someone could have been more productive. That's considering his lifespan, and maybe Schubert was. Schubert also did teach, although he led a more kind of bohemian lifestyle. Though I shouldn't say that nowadays, because maybe that's has kind of culturally or I should say racially biased undertones, I would say. Okay. Anyway, so I go back to these partials and how manipulate them and how it's important to practice them, because like on string instruments, different positions on the string, they are always in the same place. So you practice to move to the same place. So etc., etc. And that knowledge and the consciousness of that, which is a consciousness and a knowledge that you have inside your body, or inside our bodies, is what will enable us to play a passage like this, which goes from here, third partial, to what generally I like to play in seventh partial, as I would say, the G. And then we'll move back to third partial to first partial. It's a little bit like crossing strings on a string instrument, where you need to change position, but it's always the same way. You have to, and that's important. So I manipulate the partials. So I go to 7. Fifth partial again. So going here, I go I-O. Basically, I do that. And in a way, I am participating in the music with my embouchure in a very, very systematic way. And I'm conscious of it, and I do it. So it's not simply that, I think my body is conscious of it, even if I'm sort of paying attention to something else this way. So it's not this unconscious, it's just that there is a consciousness which is a physical consciousness. Okay, so that is here, and I'm not going to bother with musical issues and issues of articulation, etc., etc. That's something which is not for today, at least. Okay, now I move on to the last movement, if I can actually find it. Yeah, here comes 8. And I do this just to show you. Okay, this is this very nice slow movement here. Yeah, and it's this passage here in the last movement. Here, with the triplets, with these large intervals, okay, here, and the question is how to do that. I should go back and actually explain how I would practice, in fact, that first part here, but, if I'm going to actually read this from the music, I should put the music in the right place. Okay, did I do that correctly? Whatever. So here we have two things. First, we have this change of register, which is the change of partial. That way we go to between first partial, third partial, and that's first partial. Then we start on fifth, go into third, etc., etc., etc. Then The difficult part of this, though, comes a little bit later and has something else as its issue, which is this here. Actually, and this is a problem not necessarily of changing register, of partial, but of the balance of the instrument. Is somebody saying something to me at all? No? Okay. People, I think, are going, no, this is wrong. No, are you kidding? That's impossible. All right. Anyway, so what do I mean by the balance of the instrument? And this is that basically, and especially because our reed faces downward, it's in the direction of, we can call it, this is again a kind of noble lie, the attraction of gravity. Okay, there. That's this is not a physics course here, so that it's very easy to squash the reed. And when you change the hand position, that's very easy to happen. That's right. So if I'm playing, didn't work. So this whole thing, there, didn't work. Next one, I'm not really great also. So the question is, what we have to do is what I've often talked about, is we have to fight gravity. We do that with ourselves. It's not something that can happen by itself, but we actually have to do that. So the hands have to actually maintain this here. At the same time, when we're playing, there's always a tendency, and this is another thing that's interesting when we're playing in music, and it's in sports, it's in dance as well. We have certain, in a way, instincts. These are not tribal instincts, but they're instincts of that we have for various reasons that are actually counterproductive, and what we have to do in a certain way is counterintuitive. So the embouchure that we have, and this is the biggest thing for the clarinet and a wind instrument, that we have a woodwind instrument, is we have to actually open the mouth as we go up. And that's generally what we need to do as we go all the way up the clarinet. Uh-oh, something happened?
Something. Okay, hold on. Can you talk?
It's okay now?
I think so.
Yeah? Maybe someone can say it's all right. Yeah?
No,
Okay.
it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if we should attach that to a cable instead of the...
It's okay, don't worry.
It's okay? Yeah? Okay. Anyway, so we have to actually feel that we can work against gravity. And so this thumb, this left thumb, I look at as maybe the most important part of my embouchure. Though then that's followed by the right thumb. Because they actually maintain the position which we feel here. Now we come to something interesting. It's the thumbs that maintain this position, but the feeling that we have to maintain is in the embouchure itself. so that if I'm playing, I'm feeling a particular way here, and here again I'm feeling a particular way here, that way. I'm feeling a particular way here, but in order to make that feeling, I actually have to manipulate the clarinet with my hands, because otherwise the clarinet just falls down like this. Okay, so and all of that, again, we have knowledge of the partials, but we also have the feeling here that you're not kind of squashing the reed, but you're enabling the reed. And there's something else very important that's attached to that. And it's the next most important part of the embouchure, which is the back of the tongue. And that, as I often mention, and this is something also that I've gotten hate mail about, which is that the clarinet is basically an instrument which has a language of one vowel, which is E, he. I mean, this is not exactly true, but it's very much true. And this E is critical. And as I've mentioned this before, but what happens in the mouth, with the manipulation of the back of the tongue, sort of E and moving forward a bit, back, moving, widening this way, is critical for actually controlling your tone, and also for manipulating the registers as well. And what it does is it channels the air in particular ways and at particular speeds. So, when I go E, and if we're tonguing, diti, which I like to do here, and that way the D, the main impulse for that articulation comes from the back of the tongue. And that is like taking a hose with water, let's say, and holding it at one end here. It's a good thing I don't have a real hose in this apartment. That would create a tremendous mess. But we have imagination, and that's the most important thing for us as a species here. So as we close the opening a little, or squeeze it, and it doesn't have to be at the opening, it can be in a different part of it, we actually create more pressure, and the water will shoot out farther. Of course, you do too much and it stops totally. That's the same thing. And related to that is the technique of slap tonguing, which is something that I don't think I will get into, because other people can teach it much better than I can. But if there's enough request for that, perhaps I will try to do something with that at some point. But this yi actually speeds up the air in a way, and this is related to, let's say you have a short note on a string instrument, yi, ti, yi, yi. Generally, the speed of the bow will be faster than if you're playing a long note. Ti, ti. It's shorter, but faster. So there's actually more energy. There's more energy in that melody. And this energy, which you take the air, comes from the back of the tongue. Yi. So di yi dan, di di di. So it's a di, and I concentrate on the back of the tongue. That way. So it's a combination of the hands pulling the clarinet in a way, or picking it up this way. It's a terrible reed, but it works. And that's the other point, is that you can put on the, well, not the worst reed possible, but pretty bad reed, and you can force it to work. And that probably, can alleviate the kind of stress which can lead to many sleepless nights. So I go, and so it's if I'm tonguing, it's a d d d, and it's very much that because the air moves. So it's a etc., etc., etc. Okay, so I think that there's a lot more in this piece, many things. It's such a wonderful work, and it was an experiment. I just again digress, and this experiment has made it perhaps not very popular. And I will, at some point, maybe if I actually continue this, look at Spohr in general, because he's underrated, and the problem with it is that he's a little bit complicated, he's a little bit sophisticated, and his music doesn't quite play itself, so it's very much affected by performance. That's this way. What did I want to say? Oh yes, about this experiment. It's like, okay, okay, I continue, but I still need this. Yes, okay. And by that, I mean that the movements, and especially the end of the piece, end softly. There's a lot of fireworks in it, but it all happens early in the piece, not late. So the first movement, the second movement, the third movement, all end in this kind of calm way, and the last movement ends in minor, of course. Oh, like that. And that's why I say it doesn't play itself. And so it's not esoteric, but it's a little bit sophisticated in its idea. That's what. And you see that in all the concertos of Spohr, that they are, in a way they're very audience friendly, but the excitement of them always is sort of maybe in the wrong place. While you take someone like Weber, the structure creates the excitement of the piece, creates also the drama of the piece and the brilliance of the piece. That's why, you have the most so overtly brilliant ending of any concerto when he wrote the second concerto with that at the very end of it. Okay, so shall I go on now? Okay, I've gotten permission, so I can do that. And a few other pieces I want to go through. And there is the wonderful work by Jean Francais, and you can say it's Jean Francais, I guess, but I mean, my French is terrible. It's of the languages of which I know a little bit. There's some languages I know a lot of, but French is the worst. And that was because of my first grade teacher.
He took it.
But I'm not going to talk about that. But I still remember. We all do. That's why we have memories about that, about things that have happened to us. Anyway, so what do I want to talk about here? Because the concerto, which he wrote in 1967, when it came out, was quite something because it's kind of hyper-technical, we can say. And I haven't played. I used to play it quite a bit. I haven't played it in a while. But I will just explain little bits about the piece, starting with in the first movement. I think I'll only deal with the first movement, not with the last. Or maybe I should deal with just a very little bit of the last movement, because this all actually has to do with not only the partials, as I mentioned there, but with these hand positions, which I mentioned in the last live stream. I'm talking very much in terms of clarinet technique, and some of this is actually applicable in a kind of general way to other instruments, of course. But how breaking things up into physically different positions creates, in fact, not only stability but also flexibility and facility. And again, I digress a tiny bit, because earlier I mentioned how we are not, when we play, we are not relaxed. And this idea of being relaxed is actually, maybe that's a noble lie. It's possible that we can consider it that way, because we should give that impression. But we are not relaxed. But that's not, as more I thought about it, that's not exactly true. And as I played Cavallini, there has to be, last week, in this kind of very fast, much too fast way, but just to prove a point, that when you actually have the hand form of the hand, you can do things like that. That there is relaxation involved. But I call this now relaxation through strength. And that is that you have to be able to be strong both this way and that way, and in between you have to feel that you can actually move. And this is all part of what I've said quite often, and that is that the antidote to tension is not relaxation, but the antidote to tension is motion, because tension is an actually inhibition of motion that we have. And that's why you try to move the finger up and then stop, and then this way. It doesn't move. That's why it's tense. So you have to be able to move. And I've talked about that earlier, how you don't worry about the motion of the height of the fingers, things like that, because the fingers will find their way. And I realize that that's also maybe another half-truth or noble lie. It's not an ignoble lie by any means. But it has its sense that they will, but they only will find their motion if you have the sense of form, so that they do not move in a kind of erratic way, but you actually have trained them to move in a very consistently systematic way. And let's say something like that in the piece. What I'm doing, I'm feeling a kind of wave which I set up in my fingers. I don't. Can you see my hands actually? Yeah? Yeah? Or not really? Okay. We should do that. Yeah. Okay. You see them? Now? Hello, hello. Is it possible? Yes. Okay. It's a big delay, right? Yeah. I'm apologize to that. I get a little bit nervous. And here, and the motion of both hands is actually always together, which means that this hand is not relaxed, the right hand, if I'm playing here, but is participating in what the left hand is doing, which means that it's moving, in fact. And in that sense, it's actually relaxed, because it's not tense and sort of strained this way. So, the point is not that we relax and the hand goes like this, or that we maintain tension here and the hand's like this, but that we have directed kind of motion which can involve pressure, as I mentioned with this idea of the sponge. I do that again, why not? And I will do this a lot, and I do this a lot because in my teaching, I do this, and then I ask the student, and they go, huh? So we have to repeat, and repetition is actually not a bad thing. So, the sponge that's here, okay, I put this in the piano, and I apologize to my piano about this. I even have reeds here. Oh my gosh, I wonder where they came from. And then the rubber band, which actually can exercise the fingers going the other way. There, I also put that on top of the sponge here. Okay, and this kind of, I would say, formed or regulated motion is what will create a fluid technique. Now let's go to the next little section here, which starts with a chromatic scale. There. And there we have to be very conscious of how we move to there, that note. There, it's a written D sharp here, because he changes the pattern. And where you change the pattern, you have to understand that you have to change the hand. And again, this deals with consciousness, because we have to be conscious of that. We have to be conscious of that in our body. So even in this passage, though, I have that as a moment, and then I have what I call sub-moments, which is, since this is very regular, I break it into these groups of 6. So there, I feel that. And I don't only think about that, but I feel that in the hand. So here, I saw, so here, it actually has a squeeze. Momentary squeeze, And not only in the right hand, but in the left also. And probably, if you put electrodes here, in my feet. Ooh. So then the D sharp is there. And then we change here and go to E major. The suite is getting totally terrible. So then from the chromatic, the feeling of the chromatic positioning of hands, I actually move to what I call E major position for the clarinet. So it's here. And that happens, you see. So that's, so da 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 is what my hands are doing. And there too, I have my sub moments of grabbing, and that's in the C sharp. And there I grab this way since I'm playing. And then I move up to the B, and there I grab, and that's not only a grab, but it's a grab and a raise at the same time. You see. Probably this is very boring for many people, but hopefully it's not terribly boring if you want to learn how to play better. And then we go on to the next one, which again, that's E major. And what's nice about this piece is that if we've practiced our arpeggios and our scales, we can basically play it as long as we haven't stopped practicing in, let's say, F major and G major, which is what I think many people do. They sort of go up that far, and then the others go, oh, that's kind of hard, I'm not going to bother. No, you should really practice all the scales that even though that makes us in a certain way prisoners of tonality. And that's something for another topic as well. But here, then, we have a choice coming up, because we're going up to here, that way. And if we know partials, yeah, then we have this written G sharp, actually, the E, and then the G sharp there. And you can play it in a few different ways. There are several G sharps that are possible, and they belong to different partials. In other words, there's one G sharp that belongs to the fifth partial, and there are several others which belong to the seventh partial. Now the rule, which is not a fast rule by any means, is that it's easier to stay in one partial than it is to switch between partials. So that's what I sort of like to do here. So I will play there, that way. So it's very... And it's also good because since I want to be in what I call E major position, which is basically with the hand this way, there, so that always this finger, it doesn't have to go here all of a sudden, and with my fingers it's totally impossible. That way. Can people actually still see my fingers or not really?
I moved them.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, okay. So, this way, you see, I keep this easily here. And the other thing is that this is also something I found that for people, that they learn one way, and that's the way they do all the time, even though there are different ways. So you have to actually learn different ways playing. And one way to play, which is the different way, is not to bother. It's, again, this is very clarinet specifically, with this key here when you're playing fast passages. So I can go all the way up there And it's very easy to do that because I don't bother with this going this way, etc., etc., etc. And the hand can actually extend there and create the motion which it needs in order to play with facility. So that's here. And then we have the opposite here, that way. So there it's very clear at the G, that's a moment of, we can say, even tension, but it's not really tension, it's a moment of grabbing. And I think that should be different from tension. There. But there is an interim point here, and this has to do with basically when I play a G sharp on the clarinet, throat tone G sharp, and that's because the G sharp is here. So all of a sudden the hand is here, and the clarinet goes like this, and it's like, oh, how do I play this way? It's like, I don't know, because I just pushed it around. No, so I feel that, the change of motion there. And for everyone who is interested in the clarinet, you should practice this. And you can practice two ways, do this way, and also simply with these two fingers doing like this. Okay, could people see that actually? Yeah, you see, because, look at carefully. See, so it's that way, and then it goes back. So then we have this way. Then going on, we have all this nonsense, and then we go to seventh partial. So that we have to control, since we're in third partial, we control with the mouth. And the mouth has this motion, which is coordinated together with the rest of the instrument. And I'm not going to give exercises today, but I will, if I continue this actually. But oh, that's wrong. That's what it is. Yeah, sorry, but so I got with the mouth this way, and then going on. This way, and because we're moving up there, and I have to move up here, and we have a problem that we release the hands here, we actually have to pull the clarinet up as we play. What's that?
You play one note wrong.
I play one note wrong? Why? Did I not do that? Oh, I'm so sorry. See, I must be conscious. I was unconscious of that. No, now I play different notes. Now I'm going to play many wrong notes. Yeah, right. I'm playing a C sharp, not a D. Etc., etc. Well, whatever. That's okay. What should I do with this piece now? Yeah, I go to one more passage, which is here. This is another of these. There are many famous passages in this, and it's this one. And I play this differently from most people, in that I don't play this way, which I actually find tension producing. So I play this way, you see, and I think just that motion, both hands together, oh, 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 you see, that keeps a kind of wave again in the hand, which I just continue this way, and it's always the B flat, B flat, B flat going, B flat going this way, rather than holding that note there. So D, right? It could be better. There, but anyway, it gives you get the point. This requires another bit of coffee, but the next thing has to do with a way of looking at a passage like that. And there are certain notes, again, that you grab onto. And in this case, it's basically always two, which is B flat and B flat. So I'm always grabbing, and the rest just goes. So, and I use the air to direct me, and the tongue. So I'm going da yi, 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 yi. That way, so that the whole body has rhythm, which pushes me forward. So even here, you say da 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 da. And I explain one more thing, just very much clarinetistically, and my playing is in a way old-fashioned, and it's that I do hold certain fingers down at the time. So if I'm playing here, I'm holding this here, and I do that quite a lot. Which I could do either way, but that gives a sort of stability, and then you can extend the hand and come back. Another thing I do here, and I believe I've mentioned that before, is that I anticipate these little fingers, and that has to do with the rotation of the hand. So as I was playing this E major here with his, if you can see that happening, this way, so that it rotates, so that I'm already here when I have to play it. So it's not like this and then they go, hey, time, oops, I missed. No. You see, and that's, again, this essential rotation, which I always am talking about, enables me to actually anticipate this. Okay, so that's that. Now, should I move on or to another piece or just do this? What time do we have now?
11:35.
Oh gosh. Everything takes so long always. It's because of my first rant, isn't it? Yes, exactly. I know it. I get castigated for this. So, maybe I did enough of Francais, although there's a lot more to do, including something like that. But if people want me to talk about this more, perhaps send me a note, and I will do that. But what I should do now, I think, is move, as I was mentioning, always, to John Corigliano's great concerto. Just the beginning. And this is, I know, but this opening takes basically no time at all. And one thing is that difficult passages are very good to be used as warm-ups in a way, so that you're always sort of practicing them. I was also going to do the Donald Martino set. I don't know if I have time for that. I'm getting a kind of a no kind of thing, so I won't. So I just do this, just the very two opening runs, which have two issues which make them very difficult. One is that in the beginning, they do not look very structured. which is a big difference between, for instance, Francais, which is made up of scales and chords, etc., which we hopefully have practiced a lot, to this piece, which is not at all random, but does not have the kind of regularity which something like Francais has. And then the point is that also that is very soft. And of course Corigliano did that on purpose, because just like this firefly, that sort of, the light sort of flickers and goes away. It's okay, as he conceived it, that notes would not speak exactly, you see. Okay, but as a matter of sort of technical pride, it's good to be able to have them all speak and to be conscious of how to manipulate the dynamic so it seems like they're coming in and out. So this is the passage slowly. That way, and my read is totally, but I think it's just that as I play it, I didn't put the ligature on correctly, and it just shifted its position. Anyway, okay. So it's rather daunting, and it's hard to play slowly, but the point is how you look at a passage like this to make it possible to be aware of what you're doing, since it's really continuous throughout this whole thing. And there are two different ways, this very first passage, because one thing which is rather interesting is it actually parses into fours, completely regularly, with regularity, I should say. Okay, here. And if you want to play a passage like this, the most important thing is just to have coffee. Okay, I'm getting all these signals that time to end before I've actually fall on my face completely. But, so you can play. Etc., etc., etc. Actually, I have to do this to the reed a little bit. It's you can't just play anything without anything with this. Now, it's also because it's so soft, you have these big intervals here, and again, like I mentioned with Spohr, when you have something like this, and later on, what happens is the reed stops because you actually sort of close it involuntarily, I should say, because of the way the clarinet works and the fact that we live on the earth. And because of that, the finger, since it's going so quickly, loses the connection with the sound. And with that in mind, I say that most of the issues with this kind of passage have to do with the embouchure. So it's always a matter of kind of stretching and sort of keeping the clarinet so even something like that will work and will not hesitate. I should say the sound will not hesitate and result in kind of problem of feedback, we can even say, because we listen, and because we listen, we play. And it's something doesn't work, we think, oh, the finger is not working, and then the finger doesn't work next time. So we have that in mind. So as I'm playing this, I'm always like this. So again, it's maybe look relaxed, but I'm not relaxed because this thumb, this essential, what is that hammering? That's what we have. This is here. This thumb is really pushing up here. Now the next thing is that since this is free, in a way, you can play to your strengths. So we have that can move. And then the parts that are a little bit awkward, you can actually practice playing a little slower. So the overall effect is tremendously fast. Now I'm getting myself mixed up. So all those runs that we have, which are sequential, can move, and then the end can be that way. And you get something like that. And should I stop now? Shall I go? Let me just go to the next passage, which is the same kind of thing here, but it's actually a little more complicated in a way because it doesn't quite parse into fours this way. So we have, and then it's the same as the beginning, but it seems like it's not. So, but it's good to feel that you actually begin on the E. And then there are groups of 6. And then, sorry, I played F natural. See, it always goes into 6s. And then it goes into 4s at the end. Okay, I'm sort of going through this rather quickly, but I try to do this for you once more. Just what I'm doing is just showing you how you parse things, and I just speak about another. It's like again, in music you don't have so much these noble lies, but you have noble half-truths, you could say. And that's the half-truth of the long line. And in fact, and I should probably devote maybe one considerable amount of time to this, I will just about never play a long line. I play short lines and I connect them. And it's how you connect these which actually creates the so-called long line. But you need these positions. That's just as I mentioned in Francais. And these positions you feel physically, these places that you have, they're like destination points or points on the way, sort of halfway there. So even here, in a passage like this, you don't try to play a long line, but you play here, 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 and you continue from there. So there's one. We switched the partial especially. Before that, I hope you actually heard different points. But then so we have the 4. And actually, for those of you who have the music, I don't know. There's a new edition out. I have old, and actually the very old edition from the manuscript of this piece. But they all have one small misprint, which is here. After that E toward the end going to the C, this is all written pitch, of course. It should be F sharp, not F natural. There, and you can tell because he repeats this throughout this first movement, and it's always F sharp, and of course that makes a lot more sense than going. You know, that becomes a little too tonal. Anyway, so once again, I break things in. So I feel that E. And I just stopped just to demonstrate that. Where I actually break this apart. So then and then you can play it at this tempo, and hopefully this was a little bit informative for all of you in terms of how to look at something like this here. And I think I'd better stop, but I will continue this and along with other topics, but I will next week.
How do you play soft?
Oh, how do you play soft? Okay, now this is the issue, is the embouchure. Okay, this is how to play it. No, I can't play it all, but this way. And you play soft, you need more structure for the. And as I mentioned, the problem of the clarinet here, going this way, that way, of course, the softer you are, the easier it is for the reed to stop vibrating. If you're playing very loud, then you can sort of get away with things because you've got tons of air going through. But also, if you're playing softly, the structure inside your mouth can easily change so that it collapses. You see. And that's why the E, which keeps the intensity of air regardless of the quantity of airflow, we can say, so, or keeps the speed of the air regardless of air, is actually critical. So there are three things that you do. That's this way. And actually the he creates breath support. So we can say you have to support more. So if you can actually experiment, the more the he you do, the more you feel here. And it sort of works together. You don't go he. See, and this does work as well, but it's basically in the mouth. So that way, and all these going. So the first one. All that works. And the biggest issue is, you know, so some enchanted evening it sounds like, but there, because what's happening, the B is here, and then you play the da is there, the C is here. What happens with your hands is this. So that's why this thumb, as I mentioned in the beginning, is the most critical part of your embouchure and the most critical part of being able to play softly. So here, up. And perhaps with that, I stop now. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I do continue next week for those of you who can, because I never finish anything, so I always. I was going to actually play Martino set for you all, but that's what I was thinking about, but I never got around to it. So that I will start with next time. It's another kind of stepping stone for the clarinet itself. If you have questions about something, please feel free. Be in touch with me. Write a little note in Facebook or whatever, however you want to get in touch. And I would like to know from you what you would like me to talk about. And this, aside from my political rants, what musical issues, what particular pieces perhaps, which in fact they don't even have to be clarinet pieces perhaps. They can be many different categories of pieces, we can say. But please let me know, and the more interest I have from you who are there, the more I will feel I can say the responsibility to continue. Okay, take care everyone, please.